Hello, it's your boy, 6'6" crossover king, step by God looking for a goddess, back with another video. And today we're going to be doing a book review on Homer's The Odyssey. But just before that, I want to say look out for Derek in the background in case you see him. Count how many times you see Derek in the background, and for every time you see Derek, take 1 point off of his project. So, we're going to be talking about Homer's The Odyssey. This is the sequel to another major Greek epic poem called the Iliad. The events in this poem actually take place 10 years after the Trojan War. This book is about 3,200 years old, dating back to around 800 BC. The story focuses on the epic hero Odysseus and the struggles that he faces as he tries to return home to Ithaca, his homeland, and reunite with his family. It was composed in dactylic hexameter, a poetic structure that uses one long and two short syllables, and each line of the poem has six dactylics. Sorry. This book was passed around by mouth, hence the reason why they call it a poem. And this also led to some things being changed from person to person because you can't really keep things consistent because you might mishear a word or don't completely remember the idea. So some things aren't truly consistent with the original source material, but we can't argue about those things, and these inconsistencies, these falsifications don't actually even ruin the book in any ways. They could have probably made the book better. The book could have probably just been some boring story about Odysseus walking, but all of these pass around things probably made it much better. And I think that's enough background information, and now let's get into the review. The first thing we're going to start talking about is how difficult the book is to read. The Odyssey at times can be very confusing book to read, which is probably made harder by my youth, because I'm not that old, so it probably could be much easier for an adult to read this book. This book was written in the 8th century BC, so the names used in this book and the phrase used in this book probably are not anything like what we're talking about today. This book was not written in chronological order. The stories are out of order, which means it may be difficult to follow along, and if you're just a first-time reader, you may not know what's going on. It also introduces a plethora of characters, which may be difficult to remember. It introduces like 10 characters throughout the first book, and making this book really difficult to read for those without any background knowledge. Sentences are constructed in such a way that the author may even restate points that have been made before. Last but not least, this book was written in a completely different language, which may lead to some incorrect translations and sentences that do not make sense as a whole. And if you're trying to drop this version of the Odyssey and go pick it up from a different person, you may get completely lost because everybody hasn't translated the book completely the same. From all these points, it's easy to say that the Odyssey is a difficult book to read, and anyone trying to read this book should probably have above a 9th grade reading level, and you should try to learn some things about Greek mythology as a whole, or you will be completely lost. But don't let these things be a turn-off from reading the Odyssey. It can be very entertaining, and now I'm going to touch on those aspects. The enjoyment you get from reading the Odyssey is like a TV show or like a cartoon. This basically means most episodes really aren't related in any way, but you can find like half a day, clean a day, ultimate joy. But this basically means most episodes aren't completely related and don't have some connection, which leads to the author doing a lot of free range things and creating very good one shot stories. But there are like a few episodes towards the end of the book where you can see the direct correlation, and these all lead to one great climax, and it's a very good way to end the book, I guess. Um, each episode can really be very entertaining and action filled, such as the story of the Cyclops, to very slow paced episodes like the first book, where the characters, where the gods just spend time talking about what course of action they should take and what they should do about Odysseus. I feel like you can also look at this book as a soap opera. You can see how melodramatic many of the characters can be and how they completely blow simple situations out of proportion. Let's take the example of Poseidon. Poseidon could have totally just calmed down and just thought about it like, I guess my son was trying to eat these guys, and but instead he just acted completely out of proportion and did all these horrible things to Odysseus, giving him the greatest pain in his life. Um, but it doesn't really have to be either of those things for you. If you don't like either of those things, this book can also be very thought provoking. It can bring forth characters that can be picked apart really well, and you can even see the ideals of the time seeping into the story. Um, we all in all, these books are really for many different people. You should probably pick this book up because it can be enjoyable for anybody. Now, obviously, if we're gonna talk about the Odyssey, we have to talk about Odysseus, the main character. Odysseus is an interesting main character. Well, all epic heroes are main characters at that. Epic heroes, I should say, are main characters that have an outstanding trait. Um, Audi, Odysseus' trait has fitness, uh, cunningness, and how intelligent he was. Smart enough to get himself out of any situation. Example, you can look at the story of the Cyclops and how he was able to trick the Cyclops into thinking his name was Nobody. So when he blinded him, he couldn't get any help, shouting out, "Nobody has blinded me. Nobody is trying to kill me." Um, Being a Greek hero, however, it really doesn't mean you're perfect in any way, shape, or form. You just have to have that outstanding trait. And to say Odysseus was imperfect may just be an understatement. Odysseus had many character flaws. His major character flaw was his excessive pride, which led to turning his 2 week journey home into a 2 year long struggle. Because if Odysseus had just kept his pride and not said anything to the Cyclops, he would have probably returned home in 2 weeks. But he had to tell him his name. He also struggles with his faithfulness to his wife, and would often cheat on her with the women he met on his journey. Yet he states that he was faithful in his mind, but not in his actions. Odysseus was a really courageous leader. He was confident and he had a thirst for glory, but he was nowhere near perfect. This can be seen throughout the story, and that's what makes him a relatable character. I guess if Odysseus wasn't imperfect, we probably wouldn't talk about him at all or even see him as a good character. We just see him as this one-sided blob who's a perfect demigod who does no wrong. And now let's get to my final thoughts on the book. The Odyssey as a whole is a really good book. Yes, this book does have some flaws, just as is the main character, but I do think everyone can find something they enjoy out of this book. You may not enjoy every single episode that the Odyssey brings forth, but you can look online and find a specific story that may intrigue you and may pick your brain. I also do think this book is very important to pop culture today, and many of the stories and characters are referenced all the time. That may even be another reason to take a look at it. With all that said, I feel like I have to give the book a rating, or it wouldn't be a proper book review. And I think it's great to say that this book is a 4 out of 5 for me. It's by no stretch of the imagination perfect. Many times throughout the book, they just pace terribly, and some stories feel like they go on forever and bore me to death. But I think the good where they do hit the mark, they do hit it really well, and they do keep the story interesting with interesting characters. But that is my opinion on the Odyssey. I hope you enjoyed my review and pick up the Odyssey. If you haven't, try it. Really good book.